Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hollywood Knitter. I'm here. It is Saturday, February 13th, 2021, and what a year it's been already. And my name is Allison and I'm recording from my home in Los Angeles, California. I'd like to say hello to everybody coming back and hi to any new people watching. This is my little podcast, and what have I been up to? January has been an interesting January. It went by. Let's just go with that. I've been really busy with work, really busy. And that's probably going to continue for probably the next at least year, maybe year and a half. But I have managed to get some crafting and knitting in. And so we're going to share my FOs, talk about my whips, share some acquisitions, and then chat a little bit about what else has been going on in my life. So let's start with the FO parade. Dun, 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 dun. I'm wearing it. I'm wearing my Love Note. This is the Love Note by Tin Can Knits. I knit it with 2 yarns, held double, which is what it calls for. Except I did mine. One was a mystery fingering yarn that I picked up, I think 1,600 yards at one of the Knockers retreats. And all it said was, I think it said cashmere, merino, silk, some type of blend. Unknown who made it, unknown anything about it. It was a lighter green, and then I held it with some alpaca lace from Knitting Notions that I picked up from the last SSK I went to in 2012. No, that wasn't the last one. I think it was the first one. But it was one of the older things in my stash. So my goal of getting things out of my stash, I paired these 2 yarns together to do the Love Note. And I'm really loving it. I made some significant modifications in terms of how I did it, but I'm going to stand up real quick so you can kind of see, and then I'll kind of talk about it. I did not end up actually ever blocking it. So the lace, which is all the yoke, probably could be tighter, but I didn't really want to block it. I liked it. It's kind of like the comfy sweatshirt, and that's kind of what I was going for. But let me stand up a little bit. You can kind of see it's got a high-low hem. It's pretty, got a lot of ease. I made mine significantly longer because it's it's a super crop or a sort of crop, and not really a crop girl. So modifications. One, it calls for a provisional cast on and then doing the neckline afterwards. I didn't want to do that. I find that my cast offs, especially for necks and things like that, can sometimes not be as stretchy as I want or as neat as I want. And so I decided to instead, because it's my cast ons, to cast on and then do the neck ribbing and then go into the body. So that did require me to kind of do a little back math. So I had to figure out what numbers I would end up with at the end for my size, and then kind of figure out how I was going to cast on, do the ribbing, and then increase to get to the right number of stitches for the yoke, to start the yoke, which is where the pattern starts. So not too hard. I just did some math. I think this was like 88 stitches, and then I had to increase and things like that. The second thing is the size. I knit what is the extra large because I went with what the ease recommended in the sweater was, which I can't remember, but I'm like a 43-inch bust. And so I was like, you know what? Let me do that. And I did. And so it's very, very roomy through the lace, which is a very easy lace. But what I found out afterwards is it had significant body, probably more than I wanted for where I live in Southern California. So after I did the extra large size, because I did want to make sure I had enough here, because I do have healthy upper arms, is I ended up casting down. So my silhouette is kind of like, I have roomy here, and then I kind of did a V. I didn't do any increases. I sort of just decreased down just because there was so much room, and I didn't want it to like balloon out. So I did that. So I did decreases down the sides. I made it longer. So I think the longest the body calls for is like, for that size, is like 9.5, and I did mine to 13. Part of that was the length based on how much yarn I had. So it calls for, knitting the yoke and then knitting the body and then coming back and doing the sleeves. But I was concerned I had a limiting factor in the lace yarn and I only had 3 skeins or 1,150 yards. And so I did want to make sure that I had enough, kind of thing. So I went ahead and actually did the sleeves first, and I knit 3 sleeves on this. 3. So the first sleeve I did per pattern, and I guess I didn't realize from the pattern because I was looking at one of the pattern pictures is Amy from she has that great yarn La Bien Aimée. Yeah. Anyways, she's the one in the pattern picture, and I loved her love note on her. And it looked like it had 3/4 length sleeves and they were kind of tight. And then when I followed the pattern and it ended up, the pattern actually has it written kind of like here, but then it's poofy. It's literally straight, really tight here. So you have that kind of blouson. I might be wrong. Anyways, you have like a poofy sleeve. And I knit that one and I tried it on and I was like, not so sure I like this because it just felt like a lot of heavy fabric, because this ends up being like a worsted weight between the lace and the fingering, at least for me, DK worsted. So this is a heavier sweater than I normally would do. So I was like, well, let me leave it on the needles and let me knit the next one, but let me do traditional decreases and then I will see which one I like. And the reason I could do this is because it was a really relatively fast knit. Although I cast on this like the, I don't know, first, second day of January, and I finished it last week, it was like 5 weeks. I could have finished it in like 3 weeks. The knitting was so fast. I just did days where I didn't knit. And so when I would knit on it, like I did a whole sleeve in a day. Like that's super fast. One day. So I was like, you know what? I have the time on this that I can knit the sleeve more than once. So the second sleeve, I ended up doing just traditional decreases all the way down. I think I did it like every 5th row. I took 2 sleeves and I made it longer because it called, I said, it called for like 3/4 length and I wanted bracelet length. And I really liked it. And based on my yardage, because I measured skeins before and after, I was going to have enough to do it for both. So then I ripped back and I knit the sleeve again to that length. And then with all the yarn I had left, I basically knit the body as long as I could. I originally wasn't going to do the high-low hem in there, but as I got down and I wasn't as worried with the amount of yarn I had enough. Like I was worried that I would still have to make more crop than I wanted to because of the yarn. And so I wanted more length than I did necessarily the high-low. But I got down to a point and I tried it on and I still had pretty enough left. And I'm like, cool, I got enough for the high-low hem. So I did the high-low hem and was really happy with it. So it is a great length. It ended up being, I did all the measurements, but my body from top to bottom was like 21 inches, which for me is not a cropped sweater. It's not as long as I usually make my sweaters. So it's a great length. It hits right at the top of my hips, a little below. And then with the high-low in the back, it's perfect. And it just feels like a sweatshirt. It feels so soft. I don't know what this yarn was, but together I love the marled green effect that came out with the light and the dark green. One was like a green apple and then one was lighter, kind of like a celadon. And so together they made this kind of great marled and it's awesome. I'm just really pleased. I have a sweater. I got yarn out of my stash, which was a thing. It's one of my Make 9s. Overall, just really, really good. And the total yardage was like 1150. So I actually have a lot of the celadon left. I have like 600 yards because it had a significant amount, like 1800 yards to start with. So I was able to use up all the lace yarn and then I still have enough of the celadon for another project, whether it would be socks or probably good in a shawl or something. And 600 yards is significant for 2-color, 3-color, mixing in, you know, all the shawls that are all there. So yeah, super pleased. Love Note, Tin Can Knits. Super easy. Very well written. Lots of different sizes. Obviously, modify it. Make it yours. I modified the neck. I modified the sleeve. I modified the length. I modified. Which is what you should do to make a sweater that fits you the way you want it to be fit. So, super pleased. What else was I knitting on? My year of hats. So I had talked about the last episode that I'm going to be knitting at least 12 hats with the idea of giving a hat to everyone in my family this year. So I did the first one, and this was a free pattern called Windshell by, let me put my notes in front of me. Windshell by Luke Gilligan, and I knit it about 2 weeks on, and the yarn is Plucky Primo Worsted and the Good Old Days, something I had in my stash for a while. I'll actually put it on. It's a beanie, cabled. It's got cables, ribbing, fits really easy, really well. The only thing I changed on this, well, and it was an unintentional change, is this kind of ribbing has a center double decrease in the middle. And instead of doing it like a smooth decrease, I started doing it so I had kind of like you could see it over. So it was kind of more of a textured decrease as opposed to a smooth single decrease. And I actually didn't realize I changed it till the end when I was doing the decreases, and I didn't like where they were decreasing, how it looked when I was decreasing in the rib. And then I looked at it and I was like, center double decrease. I'm like, I can do this without creating kind of like a ridge. You can totally do it smooth. And I just didn't realize. I'm like, oh, and then I was looking at the pictures. I'm like, oh, maybe that's how it was supposed to be done. But anyways, it's a hat. It took about 100 and, I don't know, a little more than half a ball. So 150 yards or so of a worsted. And I think it's a great unisex beanie, enough texture that it interested me, but was super fast. And I really like this kind of detail that I have in the rib with these kind of slip over stitches. I think it looks really neat. So yeah, I think it will be a good beanie. Someone will like. I don't know if it will. My brother, my brother-in-law to be, heck, even my nephew maybe. I'm not sure how. Instead of designating a hat for everyone, for at least my family, I think I might just send them a pile of hats and say, everyone get a hat. And then they can kind of try on and find the one that they like. Or just because they all live together, put a basket of hats. And then, you know, hats don't belong to anyone. They just go for everyone. So, first hat, January hat, done. The other thing I finished was a set of socks. Not a set of socks, a pair of socks. And these were socks I wanted, kind of spur of the moment, spontaneous, scrappy socks with DK weight. And so these are my socks. So these are some DK weight scraps, and I think the only one I know is this a Mad Tosh. This off-white was a Mad Tosh. This was the orange that I got from Rhinebeck years ago, and I have a really beautiful cable sweater out of it that is just a wee bit too small for me, but I'm hoping I'll fit back into it. And then I don't know where I got this gray. It was like something I got at some D-stash or picked it up. So yeah, and then I was originally hoping to do some type of color work kind of detail here, but I weighed them out. I made exact balls, and then I kind of winged it based on the yardage. I'd hoped I was going to have like all enough orange to go to the foot and then do like a white orange kind of detail here, and I just didn't. Like, I got to this point and I'm like, I'm running out of orange real fast. So I just kind of improvised a weird stripe pattern and then did the gray, and I really like them. So these are some warm DK socks for me. I haven't worn them. They'll go into my box to pull out at some point. I have more socks than I can wear right now, but I keep making them. And luckily I have a new recipient, and that brings me up to, so these are all my FOs. So pair of socks, a hat, and the love note. So that means I had to cast on for new things. And one of the things when about socks, I was talking to my mom. I don't know why we were talking about knit socks, but she's been my latest kind of knit sock recipient because she's the same foot as me. She likes them. She wears them. She lives in a cold place. Now I've given her, she probably has about 5 or 6 pairs for me now. I think I gave her 2 or 3 for Christmas just because I make socks in my size, and I was like, not gonna wear these. I have probably waiting in my box of unworn socks, like 6 or 7 pairs for me, 3 pairs for the boyfriend. And I was like, okay, let me send it to my mom. And then she said something, because I think everyone has, not everyone, but my mom has this pair of socks. I made my sister a pair of socks last year in cotton because she's allergic to wool. I made my niece a pair of socks last year because she requested them, like knee highs, when she was here last year. And my brother said, when's Allison going to make me socks? And I was like, I never even thought to make my brother socks. Now, my brother is tall. He's like 6'2", 6'3", and big feet. And it's not that he's not a worthy recipient. He is, of knitting. Everything I've ever made him, he has really appreciated. But I also recognize that he doesn't wear like a lot of hats in the winter. So even though I'm doing hats last year, I've never really made him hats. The last present I made him, it was years ago, that they loved, that he wore to death, were felted clogs. Like probably a decade ago, I did a whole Christmas where I made everyone felted clogs, and he wore his forever. In fact, he had actually asked me a few years later for another pair, and then he would wear them mismatched, and so he loved them. Anyways, so I was like, you know what? I will totally make him socks. His big feet. But I asked him to basically said, okay, but I need some sock measurements. And so I sent kind of a picture that kind of showed where the measurements I want was. And, you know, waited a week or so because my family's whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to cast on a pair of socks and I have some yarn. Can you get the measurements? And my mom's like, oh, I sent him what you said and he's going to send you the measurements. So he sends me these measurements. And I don't think too much about them initially. I look at them and I'm going this and that. And then as I start to knit and I'm thinking, is this really going to be too big? I look at the measurements again and I'm like, wait a minute. His ankle is like significantly smaller than the circumference of his foot. Because that's why the socks seem big. I think he had like put like a 10.5-inch circumference and his ankles were 8 inches. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right. And like I Googled it, and like Knitty has a great thing about they got like a ton of different data from different people of their socks, and they did some interpretation of that, basically saying, you know, the ankle is usually, you know, really close to the circumference of the foot, maybe a little this, that. And I was just like, I think the measurements are wrong. I called like a week later. I'd already started the sock. And I said, I think these measurements are wrong. I called my mom. And I'm like, I need you to go measure his feet. Because she's like, oh, he measured his feet. And I'm like, no, this didn't work. And it turns out when I text my brother, he's like, yeah, I'd done the measurements with an actual measuring tape because my mom's a quilter, so she has that. But then I lost the paper. So then I used, what did he say? I used the tile or something. Or I used a shoelace and a tile. And I was like, all right, while I'm on the phone, Mom, measure his feet. And the measurements were significantly different. And I was like, okay, this is much more what I expect, much more reasonable. So I have the new numbers, the new length, and then I did a lot of calculations, you know, to make sure. I have noticed, or not noticed, I just came to this realization about socks because of another pair that I'll show you. But I always grasp making the socks tighter in circumference, but not shorter in length. And so what I've noticed in a lot of my socks is that they're actually a little bit too long. They get a little loosey-goosey in the ends, and they bunch a little bit, and it's all because I've been making my socks too long for years. So I didn't want to do that with his. I ended up casting on, I went into my stash, and I'm actually getting kind of lowish on what I consider guy kind of colors. And I didn't want to, he'll probably wear some crazy colors, but I wanted to go with something neutralish for his first one. So I've got some Cascade Heritage black, and then this is Knitty & Colors Cinder and Smoke. Look at how beautiful that is. This was originally supposed to be for me because I love these colors. But I think that this is a great neutral. And all I'm doing is kind of a broken rib on the front, and the rib is just to give us a little extra room. You know, rib socks can, when you're recipient and you're not 100% sure, rib socks are a good way to go. But I didn't want to do a full rib because then they look like they're too small. When you do a full rib all over the foot, I have a few of those and they look like really tubes. They stretch. But anyways, so this is how far I am on his sock, and it's my first knitting. And the other thing, when I talked to him, because I started the sock, he said he prefers shorties, which makes sense. My brother as a whole, even in the wintertime in New England and Rhode Island where they live, wears shorts and sneakers. I mean, he has pants and he'll pull them out when it's super cold, but he's just, yeah. So he has for shorties, so it's even better. So although I'm going to have a long foot, I don't have to do a long leg. Awesome. So those socks are cast on. And then as I was in this epiphany, and part of this epiphany was a pair of socks I had on, and I was like, these don't fit right. Why don't they fit right? And then I actually pulled them and measured my foot, see where it should be, and they were about 2.5 inches too long. 2.5 inches. Now, to be fair, these socks were sport weight socks that I knit a few years ago. And because sport weight isn't a sock yarn weight I usually knit with, my numbers were a little off. But here's the sock. And this is Fiber Nymph Dye Works. And her Valentine, I think this was 2018 colorway. I can't remember what it was. And here's my sock. And it is too long and too loose in gauge. And I was like, you know what? I can do better. I love this yarn. I love the stripes. I love the color. And I can do better. So I basically cast on for a new sock in the same yarn. I'm actually knitting right off the sock. And I'm knitting to a tighter gauge. So I went down needle size and I'm going to make them shorter. And I think I'm going to love them just as much when they fit right. So as you can see, I'm about halfway. I should use the same amount of yarn, even though I'm going on that, because it's a, tighter gauge. And if not, because I still want them to be ankles, but because I'm taking off literally like 2 inches of length off here, I think I will end up with the same size sock, even though I'm in a tighter gauge. So yeah, so that was a spontaneous, I feel like, casting on right from the sock right now because this was an issue and I want to redo these socks. So these are my Valentine Redux socks. Oops. I just took the knot off from my mom's bag. Oh, and this is a little sock bag my mom made me. Pumpkin fabric. It's really cute. Anyways, so those are the two socks, which I don't usually like to have two pairs of socks on my needles, but this is, like I said, a shorty sock for me and a DK. So I'm trying to get just a few inches every week to try to have them finished. I might have them finished by the end of this month, but I doubt it. It'll probably be into next month. So I had two socks on the needles and I needed another big project. So I cast on went into my cube for my Make 9. I make 9 with yarn, my choose patterns with yarn I have at the beginning of the year based on wanting to get old yarn out of my stash, do projects, things like that. And this was yarn, let me show you the yarn, it's beautiful, that I picked up for my sister because she's allergic to wool, specifically for her. And it is Noro Tokanatsu. And I have these 3 colorways. And I picked this up when I was actually at Virginia Beach Yarn Retreat at a local yarn store whose name I can't remember. And specifically bought, and it is a 40% cotton, 30% silk, 30% rayon. So I have 5 of the pink, 1 of this, and 2 of these. And that was just based on what she had in stash. And my idea at the time, which I'm still doing, is to do kind of a poncho for my sister. I'm not really sure why I hit on a poncho, but that's what I decided. And I went back and forth even when I pulled this out, even though I selected this poncho pattern, a month ago or 6 weeks ago. I thought, do I do a t-shirt? Do I do pullover? And then I ended up coming back to the poncho. And the poncho I settled on was a summer poncho. And I guess the person's name isn't on there. It will be in my show notes, but it's a free pattern and it's a very simple kind of stripey with eyelets. Basically it has eyelets and crease down. Ponchos are simple. In the rounds for wrister weight. And so I'm going to kind of she did hers like with lots of different stripes. And basically what I've decided is for the eyelets, which are like, there's every few rows, I'm going to make it in this white. So this is what I've cast on for. And then the majority is going to be this pink with some small stripes of this navy or royal blue kind of in there. So I've just cast on for it. I'm not very far along with it. It's right here. See? Not much. So I haven't even gotten past the initial neck, but I will this weekend and then get into the pink. And then I will have a poncho for her. Hopefully when I see her, I probably won't make her wait till Christmas because this is more kind of a summer, even though it's worsted. Even though the Noro says it's worsted, I've already started knitting with it and it's really kind of thick and thin. It's very soft. I think it will be a perfect kind of summer weight thing to throw on. She is partially working in the office. I think they're like 1 week on, 1 week off. And like most people, offices are always cold. Winter, summer, wherever, it's always cold. So that will be for her. happy to start it, and it's a fairly significant amount of yarn in my stash, and I really like the Noro. It's a different kind of, I'm not even sure how it's made. I mean, it's silk cotton and rayon, and it feels very soft, and I think she'll like it. And then the last project I cast on for is another hat. So the February hat, my year of hats. This hat is a marled hat and is a scrap buster hat. So I have cast on. Here's the ribbing. I'm not through the ribbing yet, but here's the ribbing. Oh, look at, can you tell the colors I like? It's got the green and some pops of orange. And this is done with 3 scraps. And I might actually may not have enough for all of it. So I may end up having some other colors in there. But this is Loopy Used Slate. This is Bad Amy and Lemongrass. And this is 716 Knits. And Kathy's Nice and All. And I'm holding these 3 together on right now US 5s, and I'm going to increase to US 7s for the head, and I'm going to make just a very simple hat. And the pattern I'm using is, I just went and found like a worsted weight basic free pattern hat, and so I think I'm using Beloved by Melissa Simpson, and I'm not exactly getting the gauge in hers, but I'm using, that pattern goes from like toddler to adult. So I basically am following the number of stitches for the size hat I want to get for an adult. And that, I basically just wanted it for the decreases. I mean, I could have come up with a hat on my own, but I do like to have some kind of jumping off point, because sometimes I don't want to think. And I had to think enough to change the gauge. I initially was just following on the 6s, and I didn't really like it. And I was like, well, let me look at it. And I didn't want to do too much math. And so I went down a needle size, happier with the ribbing now. And then I also did a new cast on this. I don't know why I decided I wanted to do a new cast on, but every so often I do the Googles, actually pretty often on the Googles. And so this is Jenny's surprisingly stretchy cast on, which I've never done. It's basically a series, which you can't even really tell, but it looks great with the ribbing. It's basically a series of slip knots, and was a little finicky. So I practiced it for a while, because you have to get the slip knots so that you have to basically tighten the slip knot while you're still pulling, so there's not that much in between it and the next stitch. And so it did take a little practice, but I was able to do it, and I think it looks really good for the rib, and it's very stretchy, and so I was happy. Because with this being 3 yarns, I normally do the long tail, and I didn't really want to do it with 3 yarns together. So I wanted to do a cast on that I could do from just the end and move forward, as opposed to that. So this was one that came up, and I was really happy with it. So that is my February hat. And another stash buster, getting yarn out makes me happy. And that's all the projects I have. That is my knitting. So 2 pairs of socks, a hat, and then this poncho. My goal for all of them is probably to have them all done. Well, the hat will be done by the end of February, and I'll cast on a March hat. I'm going to have the poncho done probably mid-March. I think once I start on it, because it's worsted, it will go really fast and it's very easy. I just haven't gotten into that rhythm yet. My brother's socks, I'm hoping to have them done by the end of March, and same thing with those Valentine socks I'm redoing for myself. My brother's socks, I don't think, because depending on when I finish them, March might be almost too late to wear them. He's definitely going to be more wearing them in the winter. We'll see. I might send them just to make sure that they fit. But in preparation for wanting to knit him more socks, I decided to do a little yarn acquisition, because I didn't really have a lot of sock yarn for him. And I wanted to get new sock blockers. So I'm recording in my spare bedroom, and this is where I think I'm going to be recording podcasts from now on, because it's very convenient. And I wanted to get a pair of sock blockers up here, because my other sock blockers are hanging up downstairs on my wall as decorative art with whatever the latest socks I've finished for myself or my boyfriend. So I have 2 sets of sock blockers. So I didn't want to get 1 set of sock blockers to have up here, and that way I could show socks. And so I wanted to buy these metal Bri Spun, and I ended up buying them from Webs. And since I was buying from Webs anyways, I decided to pick up some yarn, because that's what you do. So I got a little Euclid, so that's downstairs, but I got 2 pairs of sock yarns for him, for my brother. intended for my brother. One is Melon Weight Nissel and Everest, and it's got an interesting kind of self-striping sock pattern. I've never knit with this, but it just feels like it's a 70% wool, 20% polyamide, 10% nettle. I'm not sure what that is, but it's a toothy sock yarn, and you know, it was like $15 or something for a set of sock, and I like the colors, the blues and the yellows. And then the other one I got is Cascade Heritage Paints, which I love Cascade. I was just looking at my socks because I just did a sock wash, and every few months I shave them. And one of the sock yarns that I never have to shave, that is in like perfect shape, was a Cascade from, I don't know, 10 years ago. It's like the best holding up. So anyways, this one's Cascade Heritage Paints. 75% superwash, 25% nylon, and the colorway is Boston. And I know it's Boston because these are Patriots colors. The blue is a little purple, little skews purple, but it would be close enough that my brother will appreciate it. And it's got this cool little striping pattern. So I picked that up for him. That will be another set of socks for him. My goal is to knit these two and then the one I'm doing for him this year. And then if I have those socks to send him in March, I'll do that. And then these two I will knit for him for Christmas for next year. And then I have one more yarn acquisition, and this was from a Kickstarter. This is my second time embarking this Kickstarter, but it's the third year he's been running it. And it's from a guy who's based out of Mongolia, and he's doing sock yarn, and he's called it Ula and Leah. And I actually, the first year I got a bunch because it's like cashmere, yak, or camel yarns from people in Mongolia, and he basically goes and buys the fiber from the farmers, and then he contacts a mill to get it all spun and did different colors and stuff like that, and it's all backed by this Kickstarter. So I did it the first year, and then I still have a lot left, so I didn't do it last year, and then this is his third year running the Kickstarter, and I did back it again only to get some yarn to go with some that I have. And this specifically is, even though it looks, one is a DK weight and one is a fingering weight of charcoal gray 100% cashmere. So I have both a DK and a fingering weight cashmere from him previously in a red and a cream. So now I have enough to do some really cool cashmere project in 3 colors. I'm thinking for my mom for Christmas this year, but I haven't picked out a project. But yeah, so these finally came. They were delayed by COVID, basically. But they're really pretty. He's really stepped up his skein game, and because the first year they basically were, he hand wound them all, and the tags weren't really attached, and now we're actually looking pretty professional. So it's beautiful. So yeah, I don't know if he's selling online. He might be selling some online. He did some fiber, some other things like this. So if you check out the Ula and Leah page, you might have some stuff. So little yarn acquisition, not too much. I'm gonna grab some tea. Oh, I wanted to share my tea. So my tea I'm drinking right now is apple cider black tea, which I'm actually loving. It's in my Charcaron mug. I got it from Stitches West. I'm saying his name wrong, but he does sell these mugs. He is on Instagram. This is obviously Knit Stitches, and I got it custom made with just blues and orange, and I love this mug. Super tall. It's a lot of tea. But one of the places I get my tea, and I have a subscription to a quarterly box, is Tea Runners. And the tea, I get 4 teas a quarter. And you can do it every month. You can do it every other month. I was doing it every other month, but I was not getting through them in time. So I backed it off to a quarterly. And you can do a herbal, you can do a all black, you can do a mixed. I was doing all black, and now I think I'm just doing the regular box, which sometimes includes some like herbals and things like that. But yeah, so the teas all come in this fairly significant size in terms of tea. And I get, I don't know, 10 or 12 cups of tea out of this. I usually make a little pot of tea, so I probably make 6 pots of tea, and in the pot of tea, I will get 2 large cups from an initial, and then I will usually reseed my tea. I don't mind. I actually like not weaker, but not super strong tea. So it will be super strong, the initial, and then it'll get a little weaker, and I like that. So apple cider tea, this is really good. But Tea Runners, if you're looking for a new club, I highly recommend their teas. I really like them. They have they're all great quality. There's all different types. And now my sister actually for Christmas got me another tea subscription. I'll share it maybe next time. And that one's interesting because it is 2 tea bags of each type. And then I get 5 different types. And they're also been really good. And I actually like that because if I'm on the go, whenever I go back to, even though I'm going back to an office, meaning my job trailer in the field, once we go back to meetings and everyone from the office is back in and I have to go downtown for meetings and we get together for safety meetings and things like that, that's when I use my tea bags because I will bring tea with me to these meetings, especially when my meetings start at 7 a.m., which sometimes I do. Versus when I go to my office, I have a whole setup for loose leaf tea. And right now, I have a lot of loose leaf tea between the Tea Runners, this new subscription, tea I had been buying that I have my favorite blend from Adagio, which is an Earl Grey. I have a giant bag of that, that's my backup tea, my comfort tea. And then I have tea from China that the boyfriend brought back, and I have lots of teas. Lots of teas. COVID continues. I am going to work, like I said. I am hoping I have been told that. So I work for the government. I work for Water and Power in the city, and so we are deemed essential workers. But they were being very smart, and obviously not the entire department is essential. And so they've kind of tiered the essentialness of workers. So those who are involved directly in the field in terms of water treatment and water operations are obviously super essential because that's what keeps your water going. And then I've kind of been designated kind of like a tier B essential because construction never stopped. Construction of new pipelines and new projects and new treatment facilities is very important. And we are out in the field all the time. So I sort of have a semi-designation, and I have volunteered to get the vaccine, and so I've been told it will be available to me when it becomes essential workers, which I think is the next tier in California that they're opening. And so I have hopes that I'll get a vaccine in the next month or so, maybe 6 weeks, at least the first one. So that will be great. I'm really excited about it, but it was entirely optional. And yeah, so it's very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people are deciding for whatever reasons not to. I'm surprised by the number of people who are deciding not to, and I know a lot of things go into it. I'm not really going to get on my soapbox, but yeah, I'm happy for myself to get vaccines, and I wish more people were getting the vaccine. I wish we were rolling it out faster. Having been recently touched by a death due to COVID, it's real. It's very real. And unfortunately, the ones who are bearing the brunt of this are our elderly and our immunocompromised. And I want to do everything I can, not only to protect those in my family and my circle and those who might be in my circle, because that's the way it works. And to do that and to do my part and to try to get back to normal. My gosh, guys, it's almost been a year. Next month, it's a year. And I'm getting done. Like, I'm an introvert by nature, so in the beginning it was awesome, but now because I've become sort of hermity, you lost touch. I haven't gone to my normal travel. I'm antsy for travel. So antsy to travel. That's how I get how I fill up my bucket kind of thing, is I go on my interim travel trips and I have a few days where I might be super extroverted or around people a lot, and then I come back and I can recharge, and I have that. And without that, now I've gone too much the other way, and I'm just like, I was happy to be able to go back into work because I do have some interaction with my coworkers now and, the contractor. And so there was the human interaction that's lacking when you do a Zoom only work. And I am still, I got my Google email, which tracks where I've been. And, for the last month, I was only either at work, the grocery store, or CVS. And that's it. That's all I've been. Yeah. anyways, so as a result of that, I've had time, obviously, to do some of the television and things like that. And I did want to share, we just watched The Stand, which is a CBS miniseries based on the Stephen King book. And I have read the book. I think I read it twice in my life. It's a very, very big Stephen King book about a post-apocalyptic. It's very apropos now because it's basically a strain of influenza is let out of a lab and kills 99.9% of the population. And then these are the people that survive, and it's a kind of a good versus evil thing. And yeah. And so I was excited for the new miniseries. And it has like James Marsden and Whoopi Goldberg and Amber Heard. And it was just okay. I really liked, they did another miniseries, I think in the 90s. And I really remember liking that one a lot. Though I really should try to rewatch it to see if it holds up. But it was good, but not as good as it could have been. And so if you watch The Stand and you're like, yeah, this is okay. 1, I recommend read the Stephen King book. 2, maybe check out the 1990s one. Other than that, we've just been sort of, it depends on who's in charge of our TV watching. So I've watched some recent documentaries because that's what the boyfriend will put on. So we just watched the new Netflix documentary on the Challenger. We blitzed all that last night. It was like 4 episodes. It was very interesting. I remember the Challenger from the Challenger disaster, which is where the space shuttle carrying 7 astronauts exploded on liftoff. And one of those new astronauts was the teacher, and it was this big thing. And I was in Florida at the time. I must have been 8 or 9. I could remember. No, it was 80. So I would have been, like 9 or 10. It must have been right before we moved back. But they took all of us, because the launch was at like 11:30 in the morning. And so we were all outside watching the launch. I lived in Central Florida, and you could see, not as close as like super close, but you could see the launch. And so I remember watching it explode, not really realizing at the time what it was. Teachers were kind of whatever, and then going back and learning that, we watched it explode. So that was interesting in terms of the cover up they tried to do and the choices that went into doing that and the knowledge that they had beforehand that there could be issues and why they went forward. It was a lot of back information that I didn't realize because I was young. I do remember the incident, but I wasn't young enough to pay attention to all of the aftermath and the investigations and the panels and all of that. And so that was all kind of new to me, and it was very interesting. There was another documentary he watched too, that I half watched. If I'm interested in the documentary, I watch it. If I'm not, I have a headphone in with a podcast, and I like half listen and half watch a podcast while I'm knitting. But yeah, so he watches random things. He really does. So right now he's watching the Carol Burnett show. He decided to start watching that from the beginning because it's on like Paramount or Peacock or some network. Watching Hunter from like the 80s or the 90s. Started watching some of that. Like he'll throw a random episode on every so often. Like he throws on random Korean and Chinese movies on Netflix. He like totally skewed my Netflix watching experience. But anyways, that's the only one I can really think of as a stand. I did watch Disenchanted, which is the Matt Groening on cartoon on Netflix, which I really like. And the other series I'm in the middle of is Evil, which is available on Netflix. And it was a network television show that's kind of got some supernatural kind of vibe on it. So it's a 13 episode. I think I'm on episode 8 or 9. Just something to throw on. I have a long list of things to watch, and I'll get through them one day. Been reading a lot of books still. I'm in the middle of 4 series. So I'm reading the Faith Hunter Jane Yellow Rock series, and I'm on book 6, and I think she's got like 14 books out. So I'm on book 6. I'm still reading the Louise Penny Chief Gamache series. It's a mystery series. I'm on book 12 of that one. I think there's like 18 or so. I'm reading the Donna Andrews Meg Lanslow mystery series. I'm on book 5. That also has like 20-something books in it. I'm on book 5. And I'm reading a romance series, Janet Chapman Spellbound Fall series, and I'm on book 3. It's like, I think there's like 6 or 7 books in that one. Most of them are all pretty quick, and then just kind of how I'm doing it is I'm reading them all on my Kindle. And so I'm basically just putting like the next one on hold or getting it as I need through. And I'm kind of cycling through these series. So I'm reading all 4 of these books sort of at once. And every so often I'll throw in a different book just because. And then podcasts. Oh my God. So I have been watching, or I'm subscribed to a lot of podcasts, and it was overwhelming in December when a lot of people were doing, you know, the podcasts in December. But even now, like, everyone is back to going regular podcasting. And so I have like 25 podcasts right now to watch. And I try to keep up on them. And then it's because some of the people I've watched, they started putting out, like I watch Hannah from Afternoon of Craft. She started doing 3 vlogs a week. And so it's a lot. And then other people are putting out their regular podcasts every week. And so I get behind. I've got to start. A few I've got to give up. I kind of that person who has to watch them all, kind of like a checklist. And so for me, it's kind of an all or nothing thing. I just got to stop. I did that with one of my video games. So I play Star Wars Heroes on my tablet, and I play another game on my phone, and then I had another game on my tablet, and I was just, you have to do things every day in it. It's like, you know, to catch up. And I was on a team, and then I realized, you know what? I don't want to play this anymore. Like, I went to the team and said, you know what? It's not fun for any of me. I got to delete this and delete. And that saved like 25 minutes of time for me a day because I get into these things. The Star Wars Heroes one, I've been playing for 3 years now. Like, yeah. Anyways, so every so often I fall into a new game and I play it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, full stop, cut the cord, delete. And that's the only way I can stop playing it. Anyways, I'm rambling now. That's kind of all I have. I hope everyone's January was okay. February's getting better. It looks like we're going to be getting kind of back to normal. I have a trip for Zombie Apocalypse planned. If it is going on, I'm crossing my fingers it will. I think we'll be in a better place and might be able to be ready to, obviously with restrictions and masks still and things like that. But looking forward to seeing people again, being around people. Not planning any trips. Might do a trip in the spring with my family. My sister has this crazy idea about renting an RV and driving it from Rhode Island to my uncle's in Florida. Which isn't that crazy of an idea, except she wants an RV big enough to fit like 12 of us. And so it's like, I'm like, no, we can't drive a school bus size. We don't have those kind of licenses. And I'm like, it's not that easy. Anyways, so it's probably gonna be some type of crazy adventure with my family. She wants to do it in April or May, which I'll totally do. I miss my family. I haven't gone back since last July, and that's a long time. I miss them. Anyways, I hope everyone's gonna have a great Saturday. Valentine's Day is tomorrow. We're not doing anything. We don't usually celebrate a couple holidays like that. He might surprise me with something. I didn't get him anything this year. Some years I get him something. Some years he gets me something. It's always a surprise. Never any expectation. And it's a holiday here on Monday. So I actually took yesterday off. I'm a little burnt out on work. That's another reason I need a vacation and somewhere to go. It's hard for me to take like a week off and not go anywhere. So I was like, well, I might as well be working, but I need the mental break. So I took Friday off at least, and I have a 4-day weekend, so that will be good. Maybe that will help me recharge a little, because it's just nonstop. Anyways, I hope everyone's good. I hope everyone is getting what they need. I hope everyone's making it through this crazy time. I hope we're all looking forward to, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm starting to see it with these vaccines rolling out and things starting to open up. And I think for myself, it'll still be a little longer, and it's hard to hold myself back from like setting up a trip and going to see my family, but I will feel better once I have the vaccine for myself. And I would like to see more data on whether once you have it, you can still be a carrier or things like that. But, you know, that's the kind of data that we're going to get in the next year or two as we continue to adapt to the changes this has made. And some of them I think might be permanent. You know, work from home, A lot of companies are going to that, and the work-life balance, and yeah, it'll just be crazy. So anyways, that's all I got. I hope everyone is doing well. If you want to find me, I'm Allison1031 on Ravelry and Instagram, though I haven't Instagrammed in forever. I keep saying I want to more, and then I like to lurk. Not feeling like putting myself out there right now. It's just the way it goes. But that's where you can find me if you're looking for me. Or you can always send me a message. I'll try to respond. Or text me if you got my number. I got a random text. Hey, Becky. I got a random accidental text from my friend Becky, who thought she was calling another Allison, and it was crazy. But it was just a nice little connection. I haven't seen her for a while. Hopefully I'll see her this summer. Anyways, that's all I got. That's a wrap from Hollywood, where fiber meets fantasy and dreams come true. Bye, everybody.